Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something.
At what point do you start to get realistic about childhood dreams? When does reaching for the stars end and thinking rationally begin? There's something to be said about the power of manifestation, but at the end of the day, if you're 5'1", you're not going to be a professional basketball player. In the late 70s, Brian Johnson and his English rock band Geordie had a brief brush with fame. They finally had a top 10 hit, they'd quit their jobs, and were going all in on rock and roll. But they could never repeat the success, and within a few years, the band was no more. Brian was broke, divorced, and living back home with his parents. As a 32-year-old, Brian thought he better think rationally and start planning what his life might look like off the stage. But as the old saying goes, man plans, God laughs. In the meantime, tragedy had struck a middling Australian rock band, and they were on the verge of breaking up. But it was through their darkest hour and Brian's contentment on the working man's life where the stars aligned. And both parties wouldn't have to give up their dreams just quite yet. In 1979, AC/DC had released the album that propelled them into stardom, Highway to Hell. Led by their charismatic singer Bon Scott, the album helped them turn the corner from a snotty, punkish club band to headlining theaters in the UK. With dreams of world tours finally seeming achievable, everything came crashing down in February of 1980 when Scott tragically died through a combination of heavy drinking and hypothermia. For a while, the band was in meltdown, but Bon's parents convinced them to carry on in his memory, and so they did. The first task, they needed a new singer. It just so happened that a fan had sent in a tape to AC/DC's management of Brian singing, saying, "Here's your new singer." Having heard of Brian before, with Bon actually a fan of his work in Geordie, AC/DC added him to the list of potential replacements. Brian received a phone call from an Eastern German lady with a heavy accent soon after, saying she represented a band who was auditioning singers in London, but she was tight-lipped around the details.
I said, well, for which band? She said, I cannot tell you this. I said, but, well, I'm not coming down to London if you cannot tell.
She called you for the audition and says, I cannot tell you
The name
who
of the
is the
artist,
band or nothing.
I said, well, you got to give us a clue. She went, okay, the initials are AC on CTC. And I said, so it's AC/DC. She went, I have said too much.
Brian couldn't pass up the opportunity to at least audition for one of his favorite bands at the time, and so he went to London and nailed the audition. The guys in the band couldn't help but see the similarities of Brian and Bon's voice, yet they were still quite different. Both shared this powerful, raspy grit. However, Bon's vocal was more sleazy and punkish, while Brian's voice was more versatile and brought the band a level of polish that would later help them become a major force on the rock charts. The guys in AC/DC loved Brian so much, they begged him not to drive back that night to his hometown of Newcastle.
I remember just going up there and just crossing my fingers and just belting my lungs out as high and as hard as I could with as much feeling as I could. I mean, I wanted to impress these guys.
By April of 1980, Brian was officially on board. Immediately, they got down to the task of making their first album without Bon Scott. One thing was apparent right away, there was this new chemistry. AC/DC's main songwriters, Angus and Malcolm Young, had a few riffs and song ideas beforehand, but with Brian joining, full songs started falling in place immediately.
It was probably the most magical time in my life. I knew something was happening, but it was happening so quick I couldn't grasp it.
Angus and Malcolm were the leaders of the band, but Brian quickly stepped up to the plate to show he wasn't just going to be a passenger to the songwriting process.
The first song I had to write was Shook Me All Night Long. This is where my passion with cars comes in. The first line I wrote was, she was a fast machine, she kept the motor clean, she was the best damn woman. And I'm writing about cars again.
Producer Mutt Lang heard Brian's version and thought the vocal was too busy. He suggested Brian simplify it.
He said, you know, Brian, there's too many words in it. And he said, I think it should go like this.
She was a fast machine. She kept the motor clean.
I did it like that, and then Mal heard it, and and storming, and he's going, what the fuck is this?
Sounded kind of folky, didn't it, in a little way?
Yeah.
Folk rocky.
He says, no. He said, deal back the old way. It rocks.
It was a melancholic feeling for the old members of AC/DC, and for Brian, a bit awkward and eerie, trying to fill the shoes of his old rock and roll hero, Bon Scott. To pay tribute to Bon, they dedicated the music, artwork, and the title in his memory, and they wanted to be sure Back in Black reflected Bon's personality.
The guys wanted to be a good rock record in memory of Bon, but without the slabber, without all the mulch and the crap that usually goes with that. It wanted the album to be black.
And with that in mind, they knew the title track for Back in Black had to fit that mold as well.
I've filled it with lines like Nine Lives, Cat's Eyes, you know. Bon had lived on the edge for a long time, I guess. He'd always made it through, and I think it was a shock for the lads that this time he didn't.
Released in July of 1980, Back in Black soared to number 4 on the American charts. It has since sold more than 50 million albums and has become the best-selling rock album in music history. More importantly for AC/DC, it cemented their status as a major arena draw and launched the second phase of the band's existence. Before the album, both Brian and the guys in AC/DC could have packed it in and realized that their rock and roll dreams were just not rational. AC/DC with the star of the band now dead, and Brian being a dinosaur in the rock and roll world at the age of 32. But it's why we revere certain artists and bands so much. The great ones push through. They don't listen to the critics, and they don't listen to that inner voice that tells them they can't make one of the best rock records ever, and that they can't become one of the most iconic bands of all time. Folks, Loudwire has officially entered the merch game. Shirts, hoodies, mugs, pins, and stickers are now available at the official Loudwire online merch store. And no, this isn't your run-of-the-mill copy and paste designs. We've commissioned real artists to make custom and original artwork. There's parody shirts, such as this Aussie's Bar and Grill tee. There's this I Horns Metal coffee mug, not to be confused with I Heart Metal. And of course, your classic Loudwire logo on everything. Any purchase over $50 and the shipping is free. Check out loudwiremerch.com for a wide variety of merchandise options. That's loudwiremerch.com. And a reminder, shipping is only available in the US. All proceeds go to support this channel and help us make more videos and content for you guys. We love you, and as always, thank you for watching.